Thank you for joining us today on 10 Minutes with the Artist, an episodic series that explores the art practice and the personal vision that guides artists. On today's episode, we're very proud to have Gretta Berens, who's completing her thesis in architecture at North Dakota State University. We invited her here today to speak about her research and the completion of artifacts in preparation for her defense. Gretta's work pays careful attention to the way we navigate sickness and healing. Her artifact is both a sculpture and performance that seeks to integrate dignity from the outside world into the very private and personal suffering that is often hidden away inside the body. I'm Anthony Ferris, and this is 10 Minutes with the Artist. So Gretta, thank you so very much for joining us on 10 Minutes with the Artist. There were a few changes that happened from your the development of your installation to you installing it in the gallery. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you can describe some of those changes and if they changed the meaning at all of your piece.
During the change from so we had it set up first at Renaissance Hall, kind of upstairs, and it's much more open of a space. And so then once it came to the gallery, it's much more pointed. So it really had a direct angle of where it was going to go, as well as an area in which it had to be kind of contained in. And one of the big changes was the way in which kind of the descent happened over the body. And instead of having the body kind of fully shown, we wanted to conceal it in the artifact itself. And I think that really added to kind of the essence of the project, which is bringing kind of the body back into the work and kind of having the body always intertwined with what we're designing. And that kind of goes further into my architecture, too, about kind of this body as the center. And I think the changes in the gallery really added to that essence.
Okay. One thing that I really enjoyed is that my body sort of echoed the form as I walked through, and I actually had to lean over in order to continue on this path. And I was wondering if you could talk about imitation in light of maybe this idea of empathy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find so. I've worked kind of in the offices with healthcare design, and one thing that I really found that even in hospitals, like going and visiting myself, was that very often it didn't feel like the patient was ever the focus. It felt very much like the staff and what they needed was always the objective of it. And for this project, I wanted to show what it felt like to be a patient. I wanted people to get down to the level of patient in order to kind of experience it and see what they truly needed. And so this artifact was kind of my own way of seeing it and a way to show it to others as well. Kind of like what was in the mind of the patient.
The body is solid, and your work seems very light, and in a way even sort of transparent. So I was curious what you were thinking about as far as heaviness, the internal, the external, in relation to your concept.
Yeah, a lot of it was kind of about the duality of moods too, because I think when it's about finding comfort, but it's also painful. It's about really exposing everything and not trying to conceal it. I think so often it's like when you're sick, you want to cover up and you want to kind of, because that's kind of how society has treated it. It's very much like cover it up, put a wall around it. And this, I really want to expose everything. So the veil itself is very transparent, so you can always see through. You can see to the patient, but not fully. It's about kind of that space within a space, kind of showing a mood that transcends the entire space itself.
And so where does this hiding come from? I mean, this feeling of wanting to be isolated or keeping disease secret.
It traces back very much to kind of the Renaissance, not the scientific revolution. So when we first started treating bodies, we always had them as the focus. So we see Vitruvius's Man, it's always about the body, and that being kind of what was architecture and what was design. And then as we started to dissect them in these large coliseums and other places, we just decided that we wanted to discover more than we wanted to actually make the space about them. We wanted to see more about what was inside of them without actually treating the feelings or the emotions of the person involved. And I think as I researched it more, the more I saw kind of this path. And I really wanted to do something that was the opposite of what the path was that we were doing, to kind of bring back the ideas that originally were there.
When I think of disease, I naturally sort of move to thinking about healing as well.
Mm.
But your piece doesn't remind me of like an ER corridor.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me much more of like an Eastern sort of like meditation
Mm-hmm.
in a way. And so can you talk a little bit about the individual versus the institution and a sense of place?
Yeah, I think so. This has a lot to do too with I've had a really bad experience of going to a hospital and feeling very neglected and very isolated and very kind of confused, like I was being treated like I shouldn't have a disease even though I was here to physically treat my disease, like that's what it was for. And I think so many of the spaces that you find comforting are like home or these like places of like worship, or even when you're at the gym or meditating or something that you enjoy. And I wanted to kind of contradict that and see like where we could go past the ER, reordering everything that was inside of it and still having it, but then showing it in a different light that really calls us to like feeling like we're healing and not like we're in a corridor.
Yeah. At the end of our interview, we like to ask a couple of questions about your sort of creative practice.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what time of day you feel like you're most creative.
I feel like as design students, I feel like it never really turns off. I don't think there's a time. I mean, there's times of the day when you're less or more cranky, and there's times of the day when you feel more tired. But for me, it doesn't really turn off. It's just whether or not I'm there and working on it.
Okay. Do you listen to music or anything like that while you're making your work?
It kind of depends on the day. A lot of times in our studio, we really like to collaborate. So often we're always talking to each other that even if you have sound on, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you're reading right now?
Reading. I'm still trying to get through The Enigma of Health by Gadamer, but I haven't quite finished it yet. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't tell you the ending.
Okay.
So what was the most challenging thing about working in your medium?
I tied about 2,000 strings, and doing that was very painstaking, and they kept coming undone. So I think my project was definitely time-consuming.
Do you think that related to your concept in some way?
Yeah, I think by making my body kind of do the work and spending time with it, I felt it more than if I would have done it quickly.
How did you know that you were finished with your piece?
I still don't feel like it's finished. I don't think I ever really will. I know the elements of what's there, and I don't know if it's ever going to be finished.
Okay. And I guess my last question would be, what's next for you?
What's next for me, just in general?
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually moving to Boston in June, so what's next is a whole new adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much, Greta, for joining us on 10 Minutes with the Artist. And I'd like to thank you all for your time and your interest in the professional practice and the creative explorations happening here at North Dakota State University. So thank you. And for everyone here at the Memorial Union Gallery, keep creative.